Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you here like always. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you an update on my breeding season so far. Now usually I always start the breeding season around the middle of October and I run it all the way up to April. Then again from April to October, the birds get to rest. So this year has been a very productive year. All of the nests pretty much right now are busy and the birds are going crazy breeding. It has been a very successful year overall. And I've been breeding a majority of different species. Some have given me a little bit more hard time than others, but it's been going good so far. As to be expected, the Australians are breeding incredibly well, while the African species are giving me a bit of a hard time, and this is to be expected from these birds. You have to understand that these are a bit less domesticated, if that's the right term to use, because they're just not used to sometimes the environment that we offer them, where they require more things in the Australian species. So it's natural to always be a bit more successful with species, for example, like the masked grass finches, the owls, the star finches, the parrot finches, and so on, when compared to other African species, like for example the red-cheeked cordon blues, the red-billed fire finches, the orange-breasted waxbills, and so on. These birds will tend to give you a bit of a harder time, and this is exactly what's been happening here in the aviary. While my production of some of these other species, for example the owl finches, the star finches, the masked grass finches, is incredibly well, and these birds are breeding at a high rate, giving me a large amount of chicks, the other African species are not performing at the same rate, and that is because sometimes they tend to toss despite everything that we give to them. And I've shown videos in the past talking to you guys about how important it is to give these birds live food, some of the food requirements, some of the cage requirements, in order to avoid these problems. But unfortunately, no matter what we do at times, this is something that we all encounter, including myself. Things can go either way depending on the pair, because remember that each pair individually is different from the next. So while one pair may perform extremely well in their environment, you may have a different pair with the same environment, same requirements, same everything, but they just don't perform as well. They may not lay the same amount of eggs, they may not give you the same amount of chicks, they may toss, and so on. It is because every single pair is different and their requirements is different. That's why you have to play with them back and forth and switch them around, trying to figure out what is the best scenario for your birds. And this is why sometimes it's so difficult to give advice on how to breed a specific species, because they are all so different. While I may be having amazing success with a specific species in the environment that I keep them in, I may give you the tips on how to do this based on what I am doing, but when you replicate this with your birds, you may not have the same success, or your birds may not do what mine are doing. And that is because the pairs themselves are different. So this is something that you have to play by sight, play by ear, however you want to say it. You have to kind of play with it until you figure out what your birds in specific like and how you're going to get them to breed. Now I can imagine some of you are probably amazed to see the amount of chicks that I am getting this year, while others may be asking yourself, why is it that you're producing this many chicks? Why would you possibly want this amount of birds if you probably can't keep them? And that is very true. Unfortunately, I can't keep all of these birds despite wanting to keep them all. I just don't have the space. You have to understand that in my aviary, my main goal is conservation. And in order to conserve these species and to make sure that future generations are able to enjoy some of these birds, we have to focus on breeding them. And I know there's probably a bad stigma when it comes to breeding of certain species of animals. For example, you look at dog farms and you think it's horrible, and you're true. Some of these dog farms are extremely horrible in the conditions that these animals are kept in, not just dogs, but the majority of animals that are in the pet trade. And some of these animals are kept in horrible conditions. But with birds, it's a little bit different. And I do admit there are probably people out there that do this with the wrong intention in mind. Maybe all and everything that they focus on is profits and it turns into a problem because they start to neglect the birds. But for me, this has always been a hobby. And with the main focus in mind being conservation, I have to ensure that I am able to continue breeding these birds so I can have bloodlines for future generations and I can continue to keep breeding them later on. And this is something that helps out other people as well. Some of these species, little by little, have been disappearing from aviculture, and they're getting harder and harder to find. Now, with the recent problems that we've been having with COVID, imports have been getting extremely rare, and bird species have not been coming in as much as they have for the past few years. So you have to understand that these birds will begin to disappear with time. So if we don't focus on conserving these species and making sure that we have large numbers of them inside of the US aviculture so other breeders and other people coming into the hobby are able to enjoy them, then little by little we will be losing some of these species. And this is the reason why I focus so hard on breeding them, not only so that I can have birds and ensure the bloodlines in my aviary, but so that others can also enjoy these species and we don't end up losing them. Like with many other species that we have lost in the past, you have to remember that back in 2007, imports were reopened in the US. And during this time, we were flooded with a large amount or a large variety of different African and Australian species that were coming in. But we took the majority of these species for granted, and unfortunately we have lost so many species that we might never get a chance to see again. Now, there are a few breeders that are working on bringing some of these hard to find species back into the US, and they are importing them from Portugal and other places, but this comes at a very high price. So this is something that is very hard to do. It is very expensive to do, but we do have people that are trying their best to work forward with this problem and trying to establish some of these harder to find species back again into US aviculture so that we are able to continue enjoying these birds for future generations. So if we're not able to import them again, if you don't have the funds to be able to find some of these harder species, what can you do for aviculture? Well, one of the things that you can do is you can focus on the birds that we do have available to make sure that those stay consistent in our aviculture, to make sure that those numbers stay up and that we can continue to enjoy those birds. And that is exactly what I try to do with all of the species that I keep. Alright guys, well this is going to be the end of another video. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this inside look of my breeding season, where you've gotten a chance to see some of the chicks that I've been hatching and the importance of what it is to conserve some of these species in aviculture and to make sure that we don't lose them. Like always, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this continues to motivate me to make more videos like this that will hopefully eventually help you guys out and keep you a bit entertained as well. Like always, I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and we will see each other in the next video.